Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a set of sources, a topic, and really try to get under the skin of it for you. Today, we're heading across Afro-Eurasia. We're looking roughly at the period between 1200 and 1450.
Right.
And our mission really is to explore the intellectual and cultural ripples caused by all the increased connection back then. We're drawing on some great historical overviews here.
Exactly. And, it's easy to focus on the goods, the spices, the silks moving around. But what's really captivating, I think, is how these busier trade routes became sort of highways for ideas.
Highways for ideas, I like that.
Yeah, beliefs, art, science. It even shaped the destiny of whole cities. It was a time when physical links really forged these massive intellectual and cultural connections. Kind of unprecedented, really.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Maybe start with a big one. The spread of beliefs. Our sources really emphasize that these routes, they weren't just about cargo.
Not at all. They were fundamental pathways for cultures bumping into each other, influencing each other. And beliefs, well, they shape culture pretty profoundly, don't they?
Absolutely. So where do we start? Buddhism.
Buddhism's a great example. It starts in India, obviously, and then begins this huge journey eastwards. We're talking around the 2nd century CE, mainly via the Silk Roads.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting. When it gets to China, it doesn't just, take over, it mixes.
Ah, right. The sources talk about syncretism, this blending.
Precisely. It actively integrates. So, to make sense to the Chinese, Buddhist ideas were often explained using concepts from Taoism, which was already there.
Makes sense. Adapt to the local context.
Exactly. And this leads to Chan Buddhism, which notably became really popular with the lower classes.
So it found its audience by adapting. That's fascinating.
And it shows how these core ideas, they morph, they take on new life in different places. And the story doesn't stop there. Chan Buddhism then travels to Japan.
And becomes Zen Buddhism.
Right. It just keeps evolving. It really highlights this continuous adaptation as ideas travel.
It's like watching something grow in different soils.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's eastwards. But beliefs were flowing south too, right? Into Southeast Asia?
Yes, definitely. Hinduism and Buddhism both made big inroads there. This time, it's a mix: Indian Ocean trade routes, plus some overland paths.
And who's involved? Merchants? Monks?
Both. Indian merchants, monks, introducing these faiths to places like the Khmer Empire, think of Cambodia and Srivijaya over in Indonesia.
And again, like in China, it wasn't purely spiritual adoption.
Well, rulers saw benefits, certainly.
Yep.
Embracing Hinduism or Buddhism could help strengthen their authority, legitimize their rule, connect them to this wider, prestigious Indian cultural sphere.
And we can still see the evidence today, can't we? The architecture.
Oh, absolutely. Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Borobudur in Java.
Yeah.
These are just stunning, monumental testaments to how deeply these religions took root. It's like faith carved in stone. And just like in China, these Indian religions met existing local beliefs, animist traditions mostly.
So another blend.
Exactly. You get these unique regional flavors. It's that same pattern again. Cultural mixing, creating something new.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Islam. The sources highlight its connection to trade from the very beginning.
Yes, Islam inherently supported trade activities. And this concept of Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam, created this vast zone where shared laws and culture made trade and travel, easier, safer too.
Like a massive common market almost.
In a way, yes, a huge interconnected network. And this created a real incentive for rulers, say in parts of Africa or Southeast Asia, to convert.
Why? Just for the trade benefits.
That was a big part of it. Converting plugged them into these lucrative networks, brought wealth, influence. Look at the Swahili coast, East Africa.
As city-states there.
Exactly. Cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, they thrived on Indian Ocean trade, and adopting Islam was pretty crucial to their success and integration into that wider world.
And the language itself tells that story, right? Swahili.
Absolutely. Swahili is this amazing blend. Its core is Bantu, the local language family, but it's full of Arabic words brought by the traders. The language itself is like a record of that exchange.
Wow. Okay, so beyond religions, what about other kinds of transfers? Literary, artistic?
Definitely. And here, the sources point to something vital: the role of Muslim scholars, particularly in places like Baghdad's House of Wisdom.
Ah, the House of Wisdom, legendary.
It really was. They were meticulously translating and, crucially, building upon classical Greek and Roman philosophy.
Yeah.
Plato, Aristotle, thinkers whose work might otherwise have been lost to the West.
Hard to imagine. All that knowledge just gone.
But it wasn't. And this act of preservation, this intellectual stewardship, had massive knock-on effects centuries later.
How so?
Well, eventually, these translations and commentaries made their way into Southern Europe, and our sources make a direct link between this reintroduction of classical thought and the spark that ignited the Renaissance.
That's incredible, a connection across centuries and cultures, like a long-lost inheritance being rediscovered.
Precisely. It shows how ideas can travel indirectly, lie dormant almost, and then reappear with transformative power.
Okay, that's ideas and texts. What about more tangible things? Technology, science.
Two huge ones the sources focus on, gunpowder and paper, both originated in China.
Gunpowder, right. Started as fireworks, basically.
Something like that, yeah. Early forms were more for noise and show, but then other cultures, Islamic empires and Europeans, they adopted it and really perfected it for warfare.
Changed everything, didn't it? Sieges, battles.
Fundamentally, suddenly traditional castle walls weren't so effective. It shifted the military balance, a clear case of technology transfer reshaping power dynamics.
Okay, and paper. Also from China.
Yes, the Chinese had paper-making tech for ages. It gradually spread west, reaching Europe by around the 13th century.
And that paved the way for printing.
Well, it certainly helped. When the idea of movable type printing took hold in Europe, building on earlier concepts, including Chinese ones having affordable paper, was crucial.
And the consequence of easier printing.
A huge jump in literacy. Information could suddenly be copied and spread far more widely, far more cheaply than ever before. Think about the impact on, well, everything. Government, religion, science, knowledge itself.
So these connections had really concrete effects. Now, the sources also mentioned that this connectivity wasn't universally good for everyone, especially cities. Some rose, some fell.
That's a key point. These networks were engines of growth for many cities, absolutely. Think of Hangzhou in China.
Right, and the Grand Canal. Massive trade hub.
Exactly. Its location made it incredibly important, incredibly urbanized. Or cities like Kashgar and Samarkand on the Silk Roads.
Their whole existence was tied to that trade flow.
Pretty much. Facilitating that exchange between East and West fueled their wealth, their influence. More trade, more prosperity. Simple, in a way.
But there's always a but.
Always. The same routes that carried silks and ideas could also carry armies. Connectivity creates vulnerability.
Like Baghdad.
Baghdad is the tragic example. A shining center of Islamic learning and culture. Devastated by the Mongol invasion in 1258.
A complete catastrophe.
It really was. Marked the end of the Abbasid Caliphate and a major decline for the city itself. It shows the downside, the risk that comes with being a major node in these networks.
And Constantinople, another major center.
The great Byzantine capital. Hugely important, strategically located, but its strength couldn't ultimately save it from the Ottomans.
Who conquered it in 1453.
Right? Renamed it Istanbul. And that wasn't just a city falling. It marked a massive power shift in the Eastern Mediterranean, the rise of a new empire.
So, connectivity. A double-edged sword for cities. Location was key, but also put you potentially in the path of danger.
It really underscores how dynamic and sometimes, frankly, volatile this interconnected world was.
Okay, finally, let's touch on people who actually traveled these routes. The sources talk about increased interregional travel.
Yes, partly because, for a time at least, the Mongol Empire created a zone of relative stability across a huge swath of Eurasia, the Pax Mongolica, they sometimes call it.
Made long-distance travel a bit safer, or at least more feasible.
Somewhat, yes. And we have these amazing accounts left by individuals who made incredible journeys. They're like living proof of this growing global awareness.
Who are we talking about?
Well, three key examples our sources highlight are Ibn Battuta, Marjorie Kempe, and Marco Polo, all very different people.
Okay, tell us about Ibn Battuta first.
He was a young Muslim scholar from Morocco, set off on the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, and basically just kept going.
For how long?
30 years. He traveled something like 75,000 miles across almost the entire Dar al-Islam, North Africa, Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, even parts of China.
Incredible. How did he travel?
All sorts of ways. Ships, camel caravans. He joined merchant groups, diplomatic missions, and he wrote it all down.
And his writings, valuable.
Hugely valuable. They give us this incredibly rich, detailed picture of the diverse cultures, the rulers, the customs he saw, a real window into that world.
Amazing. Okay, Marjorie Kempe, different background.
Very different, an English Christian mystic. Her travels were primarily pilgrimages. Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago de Compostela.
Driven by faith.
Entirely. What's remarkable is she was illiterate.
So how do we have her accounts?
She dictated her story, her book, And while her focus is spiritual, her descriptions of places, people, and religious practices across Europe and the Middle East offer fascinating cultural insights from a very personal perspective.
A different lens on that connected world. And Marco Polo, probably the most famous.
Certainly in the West, yes. The Venetian merchant who traveled with his father and uncle to the court of Kublai Khan in China.
And stayed there for years.
Yes, and then traveled extensively in Mongol service, apparently. His book, The Travels of Marco Polo, described the wealth of China, the Khan's court, things that seemed fantastical to Europeans back then.
People didn't believe him at first, did they?
Many were skeptical, yes, but later travelers gradually confirmed much of what he'd described. His journey, true or perhaps embellished, really fired the European imagination about the East.
So these travelers, they weren't just individuals wandering around. They were part of this larger flow.
Exactly. Their journeys, made possible by this increased connectivity, fed back into the collective knowledge. They brought stories, observations, maybe even objects, contributing to this growing awareness of a wider world.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive into Afro-Eurasia between, say, 1200 and 1450. What's the main takeaway?
I think it's that increased connection had these truly profound, far-reaching consequences well beyond just economics.
It wasn't just about moving stuff around.
Not at all. It was this incredibly vibrant exchange of beliefs transforming as they traveled, of art styles mingling, of technologies like gunpowder and paper spreading and changing society.
Of classical knowledge being saved and then sparking a rebirth.
Of cities rising and falling because of these flows, and of people undertaking these epic journeys and sharing their experiences.
Trade was the engine, maybe, but the cargo was culture, ideas, innovation.
That's a good way to put it. It fueled this dynamic period of cultural blending, adaptation, reshaping societies right across this vast area.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Looking back at how these historical exchanges played out, what are the biggest cultural transfers happening today in our world, which is, hyper-connected?
What's moving now? Ideas,
Technologies, values.
And what might the long-term effects be this time? Something for you to ponder until our next deep dive.